Cleaner, and today we're going to be looking at day 3 of the code reveal for 2020. Okay, so right now we have 3 tapes, and they have all changed. This one's volume 2, this one's volume 3, this one's volume 1, and I have everything right here. So I got 68 through 69, which is the second one. So I'm gonna have to, okay, well that I'll put together. Alright, that's fine. Okay, now add text. So everything that we find, what's this one? 72 to 73, okay. Come on. So we're going to be, so different volumes for each one. So I have volume 1, volume 1, volume 2, and this was me in volume 1. And we're going to have to go through other ones to get the numbers. And then I'm going to find the Warzone codes. Unfortunately, I still don't have Warzone. I tried, but it wasn't working. So now we're going to go through this one right here. 72 to 73, which is the very new one, which is day 3, and then we also do volume 2 and volume 3, which you can do after. So I'm going to be looking at numbers. Every time I find a number, I'm just going to go over here and put it in there. So yeah, a minute, let me turn myself up a bit, turn this up, turn that down. Okay, so I'm going to be quiet for this, so everyone can hear it. Hopefully you're able to hear this. If you can, that's good. So let me start.
And acts of violence.
It's not at the very beginning, but it's alright.
On the agenda of the next General Assembly.
Next stop, Moscow. Purpose, a summit meeting between President Nixon and Soviet leaders Brezhnev and Kosygin. Agreement is reached on limitations of nuclear weapons, the sale of American wheat to the Soviets, and a trade of beverages, our soft drinks for their vodka. Another victory for personal diplomacy on a global scale.
In a field 4 miles from London Airport, the tail section was intact. The body of the plane was demolished.
With the Paris peace talks stalled, the Vietnam War worsens. Responding to a devastating Viet Cong offensive, President Nixon orders new measures.
All entrances to North Vietnamese ports will be mined to prevent access to these ports and North Vietnamese naval operations from these ports.
Gordon, he was in Hanoi, apparently to talk about a new peace effort. He said the visit was successful and that the Soviet Union will do everything it can to bring about a de-escalation of the Vietnam War.
Paris continues to be the focal point of world attention. American negotiators arrive for another in a long series of peace talks with the North Vietnamese. Presidential aide Henry Kissinger, a key figure in the lengthy and complex conferences, sounds a premature note of hope. We believe
federal indictments Washington today in the Watergate bugging affair.
In spite of the increased security, West Germany continues to offer political asylum to hijackers from communist countries. Just last week, the West German government refused to return 10 Czechoslovakians who killed a pilot during their hijack escape to the West.
As you know, I will soon be visiting the People's Republic of China, the Soviet Union. I go there with no illusions. We have great differences with both powers. We shall continue to have great differences. But peace depends on the ability of great powers to live together on the same planet despite their differences. We would not be true to our obligation to generations yet unborn if we failed to seize this moment to do everything in our power to ensure that we will be able to talk about those differences rather than to fight about them in the future.
Peking, historic site for an unprecedented meeting between East and West. Responding to a special invitation, President and Mrs. Nixon arrive, and Premier Zhou Enlai is on hand to extend an official welcome to the presidential couple. It's Mr. Nixon's initial move toward his self-proclaimed goal, a generation of peace. A confident president, anxious to end the diplomatic freeze between the United States and China. Mao. Top aide Henry Kissinger joins the talks with Premier Zhou Enlai on Vietnam and East-West trade. The First Lady views giant pandas, a gift of the People's Republic. Personal presidential diplomacy tentatively parts the bamboo curtain.
His condemnation of U.S. military actions in Vietnam and revealing he brought back assurances from Hanoi about the release of American prisoners of war.
Including the foreign minister, talked for well over an hour with the prime minister, 2 hours and 45 minutes with the foreign minister, and I've got both verbal and written assurances about the prisoners.
Clarence Kelly, the president's choice to be permanent head of the FBI, cleared the Senate Judiciary Committee today. We'll have reports tonight on the economy, and we'll see what happened to a fat man who had part of his insides cut out in an effort to be a thin man.
Massive crowds take to the streets of the Egyptian capital. Euphoria. After 5 lean years, there are signs that Egypt is about to stand on its own feet. They are cheering this man. It was then that President Anwar Sadat dropped his diplomatic bomb. He announced that the Russians had been asked to withdraw their advisors from Egyptian soil after nearly a decade of Soviet-Egyptian cooperation.
Televised violence can increase aggressive tendencies in some children. We will have to manage our program.
I congratulate you for that statement.
Ballot of the committee. Out of 70 ballots, 36 were to withdraw the invitation to the Rhodesian team, 31 were for maintaining it, and 3 were blank. This means the invitation to the Rhodesian team to participate in the games of the 20th Olympiad has been withdrawn.
The Rhodesians left angry. Representatives of Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, and Uganda were jubilant. The expulsion of Rhodesia culminated a campaign that saw American black athletes pledge to walk out with the Africans. Now their teams, they say, will unpack their suitcases, give up their threatened boycott, and the Summer Olympics can go on.
Munich houses the Olympic flame as athletes from all over the globe gather for the traditional games. Officials hope that world tensions will not create an incident.
President's press secretary.
said of this incident, I'm not going to comment from the White House on a third-rate burglary attempt. Obviously, he said, we don't condone that kind of second-rate activity. There was little Republican reaction today to the charges that they mounted a massive intelligence and sabotage operation against the Democrats.
Without moving a chess piece, he emerged world champion. Spassky had phoned the judge and conceded. With a stronger position, Fischer had achieved at adjournment the night before.
In Paris, on Avenue Kléber, in a former Gestapo headquarters, politicians have been talking for 4 years about ending a war. The truth of the matter is that the Paris peace talks, hailed as a major breakthrough in 1968, have by 1972 achieved nothing. The delegates still turn up, make accusatory speeches, and leave. And yet in other parts of Paris, secret meetings between Americans and North Vietnamese did attempt to break the deadlock. The American initiative was led by President Nixon's special advisor, Dr. Henry Kissinger. Since 1970, he has met North Vietnamese leaders 12 times. At their meetings, he offered much of what the communists demanded: withdrawal of American forces and new elections in South Vietnam. But all offers were rejected or ignored, and the whole American formula publicly rebutted by Hanoi.
Apollo 17, first nighttime launch in history. The body of former Chief Executive Harry S. Truman lies in state. Death came at 88 after a long and typically courageous struggle with illness. Former President and Mrs. Johnson and President and Mrs. Nixon attend rites.
President, are you ready to take the constitutional oath? If you will place your left hand on the Bible and raise your right hand, and please repeat after me. I, Richard Nixon, do solemnly swear.
I, Richard Nixon, do solemnly swear.
That I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
That I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
And will, to the best of my ability.
And will, to the best of my ability.
Preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
Preserve and protect
and defend the Constitution of the United States. So help me God. So help me God.
Alexander Butterfield drops a bombshell. The president has secretly taped all of his White House conversations, including those involving Watergate. The president had already installed a new attorney general to handle Watergate. Harvard law professor Archibald Cox becomes special prosecutor. Picking up the gauntlet, Cox goes before Sirica to subpoena the elusive tapes. In his client's behalf, Charles Allen Wright pleads confidentiality to deny Cox his demand. Sirica votes Cox. He is in turn upheld by the Court of Appeals. The abrupt departure of Cox and Richardson draws a fierce storm of protest. The president backs down. However, the apparent acquiescence by the White House falls short of its promise when 2 of the key tapes mysteriously disappear. In 18 minutes of another tape turn up blank. Pressed for an explanation, Presidential Secretary Rosemary Woods blames it on a variety of miscues. Nevertheless, the House Judiciary Committee, under the chairmanship of Peter Rodino, is convened to consider impeachment.
While the president was involved, that he did not realize or appreciate at any time the implications of his involvement. And I think that when the facts come out...
We went on the pay board in an effort to try to make the controls work, but it's now very clear that there's no real attempt to control inflation. The only real attempt is to control the wages of working people.
In the House of Representatives, there is not a member left who thinks the president will not be impeached, and apparently not many who will side with him when it comes to a vote.
Okay, so that was the first one. I have to rewatch some of it because I missed some numbers. But if you don't know what this is, every single day, there's gonna be a new tape, and there's gonna have a different version. So today we got version 3 for the first one, version 2 for this one, and we got version 1 for the third one. So tomorrow we'll have version 2, version 3, and version 4. So every day will be a new version, new Warzone code to put into a bunker, and we get more ciphers to solve these different things.
Released today in Saigon, 11 Americans were killed in combat, 20 were wounded. More than 900 South Vietnamese soldiers were killed and more than 3,200 South Vietnamese wounded.
In one important aspect, the offensive has backfired badly on the North Vietnamese. It has harmed them politically inside South Vietnam. For the first time, there is a remarkable degree of political solidarity in the country. President Thieu is firmly in control. The only criticism has come from opposition leaders who felt they had to say something to protect their positions. Even they have not blamed Thieu for the communist successes. President Thieu's position is still largely dependent on the support he gets from Washington. He is the American choice to run Vietnam.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
We are certifying the 26th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States.
That amendment, as you know, provides for the right to vote of all of our young people between 18 and 21. 11 million new voters as a result of this amendment.
A massive shock rippling out of the mountains just north of the San Fernando Valley. Hitting here, missing there, but shaking most of Southern California. Fires everywhere.
I think Pete's absolutely right about this medical job. This is the first time we've ever had the space available to really adequately test the guy up there to see how he behaves under zero gravity for long periods. So we really don't know what's going to happen to the guy in the long term. And this is probably, to my mind, the single most important thing that we've got to do in Total Skylab is find out whether man himself does have a future in space in terms of making long journeys to somewhere else.
Now people are beginning to pick up the pieces.
What are you looking for down there?
Money and all sorts of things like spoons, forks, knives, parts of mirrors, parts of plates.
You found anything?
Yep, money, spoons, razor blades.
How much money did you find?
$4.98.
How long are you going to keep digging?
Till I have to go home.
I will only say that I've had some experience, and a great deal of experience, as a matter of fact, in this past year in dealing with communist leaders. I find that making a bargain with them is not easy. And you get something from them only when you have something they want to get from you. The only way we're going to get our POWs back is to be doing something to them, and that means hitting military targets in North Vietnam, retaining a residual force in South Vietnam, and continuing the mining of the harbors of North Vietnam.
Apollo 16 lifts America back into space and gives our astronauts a dune buggy tour of lunar land.
Okay. I think that it's interesting to consider what Margaret Mead said about women who are honored in authority in this country. She said that, in fact, widows are the only such women, because what you have to do is be married to a man who has a certain position, live out your role of childbearing and housekeeping. Then, through no fault of yours, he dies. And then alone, is it all right for you to take over his job. We've decided that that's awfully hard on the men.
Señor presidente, vemos este hermoso espectáculo de niños en brazos de sus madres. Aquí están dos jóvenes madres con dos hermosas niñas que las abrazan.
At this rally in Silver Spring, Maryland, Governor Wallace's campaign is crushed by violence. Arthur Bremer, seen applauding a 21-year-old busboy, uses the cover of the crowd and the confusion to get close enough to the candidate for an attempted assassination.
Today was the critical operation for the governor to remove a bullet lodged near his spinal column and to find out whether the bullet had cut his spine. A controversial day in politics. A man arrested trying to bug the offices of the Democratic National Committee in Washington turns out to be an employee of President Richard Nixon's re-election campaign committee. And perhaps a significant day for the Vietnam peace negotiations, the president of the Soviet Union has left Hanoi, saying they will resume soon.
Mother Nature unleashes the fury of Hurricane Agnes across 4 states: Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania, and New York. 134 lives are lost. Thousands are homeless. Runs into millions.
I can assure you that as Secretary General of this organization, I am deeply worried about this development. It is extremely serious. And it is for this reason that I decided on my own, I want to stress this, to put this question of terrorism and acts of violence on the agenda of the next General Assembly.
Next stop, Moscow. Purpose, a summit meeting between President Nixon and Soviet leaders Brezhnev and Kosygin. Agreement is reached on limitations of nuclear weapons, the sale of American wheat to the Soviets, and the trade of beverages, our soft drinks for their vodka. Another victory for personal diplomacy on a global scale.
In a field 4 miles from London Airport, the tail section is intact. The body of the plane has been marked.
With the Paris peace talks stalled, the Vietnam War worsened. Responding to a devastating Viet Cong offensive, President Nixon orders new measures.
All entrances to North Vietnamese ports will be mined to prevent access to these ports and North Vietnamese naval operations from these ports.
Gordon was in Hanoi apparently to talk about a new peace effort. He said the visit was successful and that the Soviet Union will do everything it can to bring about a de-escalation of the Vietnam War.
Paris continues to be the focal point of world attention. American negotiators arrive for another in a long series of peace talks with the North Vietnamese. Presidential aide Henry Kissinger, a key figure in the lengthy and complex...
Okay, so I'm trying to fix this so we can get the next set of numbers for version 2. 68 to 69, 2, 8, 69, B2, 9. So, blue one. So blue one is that chart. Okay. So with the Warzone code I took a picture of it, then that will release these, but everything here was leaked early on a YouTube video. So yeah, I just took a picture of those and put it there. So I have those. Not going to be selling them or anything, I just want to have them just so I know what we got. So we got all those up, okay. Good, let's go on this one.
Part of the greatness of our country. I have great faith in American youth. The youth of today can change the world. And if they understand that, I think that we're going to go forward to a great age, not just for Americans, but for peace and progress for all the people of the world.
This game depends, however, on his unwritten alliance with Reagan. Announcing open candidacy, Reagan now speeds from caucus to caucus. If Reagan can persuade his Southern friends to break their prior pledges to Nixon, the convention will come apart.
NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, presents Aeronautics and Space Report.
At Christmas time, the crew of the USS Pueblo returned home after nearly a year of captivity in North Korea. Hooker and his crew were met by relatives in San Diego. After a tearful reunion, the men unfolded a tale of torture at the hands of the communists bent on extracting confessions. Weeks of probing lay ahead, but for the Pueblo crew it was a time for rejoicing and sorrow. Grief for the one-ship mission.
Astronauts Neil A. Armstrong, Edwin E. Aldrin, and Michael Collins, the three men who will make the next and most historic round trip to the moon.
The men rose early, ate breakfast, and dressed in their spacesuits. They must work in a weightless environment, keeping their spacecraft and themselves in good condition. Data must be collected and reported. Experiments must be performed.
including photography both inside and outside the spacecraft. Because of the film speed, these actions appear faster than they actually were.
In Vietnam, Viet Cong rockets hit Saigon during the night for the first time in 2.5 weeks,
The new communist campaign in Vietnam continues. Just after midnight their time, a band of Viet Cong raiders blew up a power installation and attacked 2 police stations in Saigon. Other small bands still roam the city.
Hamburger Hill was the biggest engagement so far in Operation Apache Snow, started 3 weeks ago. The objective of the operation was not the hill, but control of the A Shau, the main infiltration route threatening northern coastal cities. After the 101st Airborne Division troopers wrested Hamburger Hill from the enemy, there was a pause in the fighting. Big guns were trained.
The 10-day offensive against the dug-in enemy cost 55 American lives and 300 wounded. Enemy losses are put at 400.
President Nixon's interest is in getting the U.S. out of the war in some acceptable way, whereas President Thu's interest is in seeing his own government survive the end of the war.
In North Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh died. He's led his communist forces through 3 decades of warfare. After defeating the French, he fought the U.S. and her allies for 9 years.
I believe we must take risks for peace, but calculated risks, not foolish risks. We shall not trade our defenses for a disarming smile or charming words. We are prepared for new initiatives to control of arms in the context of other specific moves to reduce tensions around the world. I believe that America is not going to become a garrison state or a welfare state or a police state simply because the American people will defend our values from those forces, external and internal, that would challenge our rights.
The moment you mention nuclear weapons today, a lot of people get jittery and they seem to don't even want to discuss it. Nuclear weapons are a deterrent to war. We ought to remain the strongest nuclear power in the world. And we won't use any weapons unless we have to. But we will use any weapons if necessary to protect America and her people.
More than 350,000 people, mostly young people, showed up to hear the greatest rock groups in the country. The promoters billed it as 3 days of peace and music. And for most people, it was just that, little thanks to the promoters. There were many problems, like not enough sanitation facilities, food, or water. It'll be 2 or 3 days before all the people leave the peace and quiet of the Catskill Mountains. It may be longer before this area returns to normal. Despite the problems, and there were many problems, though they were not.
Tablets or liquid.
I guess you're about the only person around that doesn't have TV coverage of the team. Oh, it's beautiful, Mike. It really is. Yes, indeed. They've got the flag up now, and you can see the stars and stripes on the lunar ticket.
Astronauts Collins, Aldrin, and Armstrong came out of their sealed quarantine tank last night
and today had their first day at home in peace. But it will not last long. The schedule in front of them is in some ways more arduous than their trip to the moon.
So yeah, these tapes are about 20 minutes long, so get some snacks and settle down and watch them.
For it seems now more certain than ever that the bloody experience of Vietnam is to end in a stalemate. But it is increasingly clear to this reporter that the only rational way out then will be to negotiate, not as victors, but as an honorable people who lived up to their pledge to defend democracy and did the best they could.
I am announcing today my candidacy for the presidency of the United States. I do not run for the presidency merely to oppose any man, but to propose new policies.
So it just seems to me what is required in the United States is not what Vice President Humphrey has said, which is the politics of joy and the politics of happiness, but the politics of reality. What the problems are in the country. And it's all fine that we have all of these. Thank you. You come with me.
January 1968, the Tet Offensive. Suddenly, the enemy finds new strength to strike, denying all American tales of progress.
Vietnam is right in my battle. Saigon is scorched.
United States bombers continue their raids against the North. Our military called the attacks necessary, but Hanoi said that no peace talks could begin until the bombing stopped.
In Morocco's capital city of Rabat, crowds estimated at over 1 million jammed the route of the funeral procession of King Mohammed V. His son and heir, King Hassan, and Tunisian President Bourguiba helped carry the bier.
When finally Vice Premier Key had to go on the air to announce a general curfew throughout the city and the imposition of martial law, he had to do it on the American Armed Forces radio station because his own Saigon radio station had been blown to pieces.
We have ordered our aircraft and our naval vessels to make no attacks on North Vietnam, except in the area north of the demilitarized zone where the continuing enemy buildup directly threatens Allied forward position.
The North Vietnamese would talk. Gabriel Harriman. With Marshal.
And now in March, his generals report they need 200,000 more men in Vietnam. These troops he sends to war are fellow citizens. Their warm and precious lives pledged to a cause that many of their countrymen wish to yield. Courage to persist is of the essence of a leader. Courage to stop sometimes takes greater will.
For the 8th day in a row, fighting continues here in the Cholan district.
Now, since the communist offensive, almost every city and town in South Vietnam is cut off from the others.
President Thieu of South Vietnam said today that anyone who advocates a coalition government for his nation is a traitor. That it will give North Vietnam a total of $45 million in aid and long-term credits.
The minority chants its protest.
I say that when respect for the United States
Respect for the United States has fallen all over the world. But when it has fallen so low that a fourth-rate military power will hijack an American naval vessel in international waters, then it's time for new leadership for the American people at home. And we should provide
10, 9. We have ignition sequence start. The engines are armed. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. We have liftoff. Liftoff at 7:51 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have cleared the top.
Tower clear, 13 seconds.
Apollo 8, Houston. Apollo 8, Houston. Apollo 8, Houston. Apollo 8, Houston.
Apollo 8, over.
Hello, Apollo 8. Loud and clear.
Roger. Please be informed there is a Santa Claus.
That's affirmative. You're the best one to know.
As Borman, Lovell, and Andrews stepped onto the carrier deck, a huge and patriotic celebration broke loose in Mission Control. A celebration echoed by the hundreds of thousands of men and women who were Apollo 8.
Step on the moon. What do you think of it?
I can't believe how short, just 8 years, how long it just made to beat the Russians and everything. I can't believe it, that it just happened, and we can see it in our lifetime, and how much it we'll probably see, you know, that my whole lifetime, more.
Nowhere is the grotesque nature of this year's politics more vivid than in Washington. For the first time since the Civil War, soldiers must defend the Capitol. Machine guns turned upon Americans, whose laws no longer bind.
Люди прочли в газетах, услышать по радио, как космический корабль пилотирует волнующий советского.
The feeling that I had when I won the Olympics was a feeling so proud and just wanting to belong to the country. And it's the most wonderful feeling anyone could ever have.
The tragic news from Czechoslovakia shocks the conscience of the world. The Soviet Union and its allies have invaded a defenseless country to stamp out a resurgence of ordinary human freedom. It is a sad commentary on the communist mind that a sign of liberty in Czechoslovakia is deemed a fundamental threat to the security of the Soviet system. The excuse...
Nejsilnější jsou u předsednictva vlády, které bylo obsazeno nejprve. Násilím byl odtud vyvlečen premiér Černý. Těla rozmístěna v parcích míří i na Pražský hrad. Tam v těchto chvílích tlí prezident republiky Ludvík Svoboda, který zhruba před 25 lety bojoval v Čechách. I když už po 2. hodině noční, například ředitele spojů Hoffmana, byly vypnuty vysílače. Později se však statečným spojařům podařilo spojení znovu navázat a rozhlas mohl vysílat dál zprávy o napadení Československa.
I shall not seek, and I will not accept the nomination of my party for another term as your president.
Nixon chooses Chicago to open his assault on Humphrey in September. There, where only 1 week earlier streets and parks were battleground, the Republican draws 400,000 people. A triumphal first week carries him from Chicago to San Francisco and back across the land. Buoyant, wherever he campaigns, he underscores his message.
Artillery and ammunition are loaded and moved out to forward fire bases. The objective, to hit the enemy anywhere between Da Nang and the DMZ, and west into Laos again if necessary.
The Marines and airborne advanced into the communist line.
We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things. Not because they are easy, but because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win, and the others too.
From the Cold War, the ground forces of NATO have been alert against the military threat of the communist bloc. Now, honest John Nichols adds to NATO's striking power.
President Kennedy begins a tour of 4 space installations at Huntsville, Alabama, where he is greeted by Dr. Wernher von Braun, space pioneer and director of this research and development center. The missiles on display are dwarfed by the mighty Saturn rocket. This booster is the first stage of the rocket that will put the 3-man Apollo capsule into a 2-week orbit of the Earth in 1964. Preliminary to a lunar shoot. Gemini, which was developed here, will allow 2 men to orbit the Earth for 2 weeks and will be used for experiments in outer space rendezvous and docking missions. This winds up the President's first-hand look at our space program and our progress in the race for space.
This deficit comes from a recession. We can take the proper action in the proper time. The important step we can take to prevent another recession. That is the right time to make tax cuts, both for your family budget and the national budget.
Chiang Kai-shek, leader of the peoples of Free China on the island of Taiwan, heads the celebration of the 50th anniversary of the overthrow of the Manchu dynasty. 11 million Chinese, strong with their dream of someday wresting their homeland from the communists, are marking the day that saw the end of 4,000 years of monarchy in China.
Khrushchev declared, through the formation of the world system of socialism, the situation in the world has altered radically. At present, it is not circles whom. On December 2nd, 1961, Castro reveals, I am a Marxist-Leninist and will be one until the day I die. Socialism is a word. There is no halfway between socialism and imperialism.
This government, as promised, has maintained the closest surveillance of the Soviet military buildup on the island of Cuba. To halt this offensive buildup, a strict quarantine on all offensive military equipment under shipment to Cuba is being initiated. All ships of any kind bound for Cuba, from whatever nation or port, where they're found to contain cargoes of offensive weapons, be turned back. It shall be the policy of this nation to regard any nuclear missile launched from Cuba against any nation in the Western Hemisphere as an attack
by the Soviet Union on the United States, requiring a full retaliatory response upon the Soviet Union.
Communism's adventure in Cuba is a sophisticated one. Political, psychological, subversive, with paramilitary features. Can a democratic society, wherein the right to know and the value of knowing are basic, can a democratic society wage successful political, psychological, subversive warfare against communism?
Leather is falling into step in the fall fashion parade. Finished in an explosion of rainbow colors, leather has been styled into smocks and sheath-top skirts like this eye-stopping pair. Just the thing for a day's outing at Sterling Forest Gardens in New York.
In Trafalgar Square, 2,000 Londoners demonstrate against the United States blockade.
Fidel Castro whips up a furor in Cuba, charging the United States with arming and training mercenary forces for an imminent invasion. He calls out some 200,000 militiamen for training and guard duty at key points throughout Havana. Khrushchev happily receives a gift of the Cuban flag as he lines up with a solid endorsement for the home-brewed anti-Americanism of Fidel Castro, the Soviet sole Western Hemisphere ally.
As he arrives back in Washington, the president hears more bad news. China has just invaded India. Is this part of a two-pronged communist assault? Now the president must weigh all the factors one final time, then make his decision, knowing that whatever he does, he risks nuclear war.
Meanwhile, the United States continues to reinforce its Cuban base at Guantanamo Bay, the naval depot that Castro wants the U.S. to give up. These Marines have been assigned the job of protecting the base against any Cuban threats that might arise during the present crisis.
Mr. President, I am submitting today a resolution to the Security Council designed to find a way out of this calamitous situation. This resolution calls, as an interim measure under Article 40 of the Charter, for the immediate dismantling and withdrawal from Cuba of all missile and other offensive weapons.
The inauguration of Abraham Lincoln as the 16th President of the United States is reenacted in the nation's capital 100 years after the event. There's a crowd larger than the original president this day, double the 10,000 of 1861. And the bright balmy day is in marked contrast to the gloomy overcast of a century ago. Scenes familiar from history books and movies come to life at the Capitol as Mr. Lincoln arrives. He is portrayed.
The following is the letter which has just been dispatched from the President to Chairman Khrushchev. I think that you and I, with our heavy responsibilities for the maintenance of peace, were aware that developments were approaching a point where events could have become unmanageable. So I welcome this message and consider it an important contribution to peace.
It urgently recommends that the United States and the Soviet Union confer promptly on measures to remove the existing threat to the security of the Western Hemisphere and the peace of the world, and to report thereon to the Security Council.
Earlier today, Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara announced that yesterday's photographic surveillance of Cuba indicated that the bases were being dismantled.
But with increased United States aid and instruction, Vietnam soldiers learned to fight back against the communist Viet Cong. Helicopters become a crucial weapon against guerrillas who strike, then disappear will-o'-the-wisp in marshes. Southeast Asia and Berlin are not the only hazard areas in the orchestrated struggle of the Cold War. There is Cuba, from which Bay of Pigs invaders hobble back when their ransom is paid.
The president visits the big missile center at Vandenberg Air Force Base. He becomes the nation's first president to see an intercontinental ballistic missile fired when an Atlas D blasts off its pad to roar down the Pacific Missile Range
Okay, so as you can see by EMC2, day 3 has been crossed off, so all information has been put out for today. Now, I'm going to finish watching this. It's probably, I said watch like 10 minutes, but tomorrow at like 11:30 I will be streaming, and we will watch the new one and everything tomorrow, and I will be more prepared. So, yeah.
Evacuating its last stronghold in north-central Laos. Now the communists may want to begin the ceasefire talks.
I believe that in the 19th, the United States can once again capture the imagination of the world.
Chicago, the Windy City, is both windy and snowy in the wake of a storm which leaves more than half a foot. Temperatures drop to 0 during the storm. San Francisco gets the heaviest snow in 30 years. Children, many of whom have never seen snow before, are more spellbound than snowbound. But they soon learn what to do with the stuff.
I, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, do solemnly swear
that you will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States
And will, to the best of your ability,
and will, to the best of my ability,
preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country.
British Prime Minister Harold Macmillan arrives in Key West, Florida for a conference with the President on the explosive crisis in Laos. They jointly declare determination to prevent the Southeast Asian kingdom from being taken over by communist-supported rebels. Also discussed is Britain's ceasefire proposal to Moscow.
The Soviet Union willing to agree to a ceasefire in Laos?
We touched in conversation this subject. I have nothing to say publicly at this moment.
The look for 61 will recall the Jazz Age, and where Paris leads, the rest of the fashion world is likely to follow.
Here was a new symbol of communist ruthlessness. Overnight, East Berlin became a concentration camp, sealing in the inhabitants of that sector. Barbed wire and cement were the answers to the refugee problem.
Khrushchev repeats his threat to sign a separate peace treaty with East Germany, which he claims, wrongly,
Served with an order by East German authorities that all U.S. personnel must show identification before entering that section of Berlin, American troops answer with the only language the Reds seem to understand, a show of art.
Castro marks the second anniversary of his revolution with the biggest military parade ever staged in Cuba, featuring tanks and other heavy weapons from Russia and Red Czechoslovakia. Shortly afterwards, Castro demanded the United States Embassy drastically reduce its staff to 11 persons. It was the last straw in his long campaign of provocation and harassment.
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal
Before this decade is out, of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth. No single space project in this period will be more impressive to mankind or more important for the long-range exploration of space, and none will be so difficult or expensive to accomplish.
The assault has begun on the dictatorship of Fidel Castro. Cuban Army pilots opened the first phase of organized revolt with bombing raids on 3 military bases.
In Havana, Acting Foreign Minister Olivares shows diplomats rockets fired from the Cuban raiders, which he claims have U.S. marking.
These charges are totally false, and I deny them categorically. The United States has committed no aggression against Cuba, and no offensive has been launched from Florida or from any other part of the United States.
Entre un grupo de los hombres más valientes del mundo.
Castro gloated over his victory and told the world that Cuba was now a socialist nation and would hold no more elections. The next day, the United States officially proclaimed Cuba to be a communist satellite state.
His first great success in space, when the Russians pushed a man across the threshold. He was Yuri Gagarin, the astronaut the Russians lionized as the first to... It was the propaganda coup of the year.
Today, this Redstone Mercury is the center of world attention as Lieutenant Commander Shepard walks to the elevator that will carry him 65 feet aloft to the capsule. It's 6:20 a.m., a moment of history. 2, 1, 0. Gracefully along.
115 miles up, he went 300 miles downrange, right on target, and was picked up by waiting helicopters. The triumph of Alan B. Shepard, U.S. space pioneer. As the captain prepared to leave the capsule, explosive bolts on the escape hatch let go. Mercury is lost. However, the moon gets closer.
Albany, Georgia. A Negro fight against segregation is led by the Reverend Martin Luther King.
And if necessary, we must be willing to fill up the jails all over the state of Georgia.
Каждый вращается в колоссальный светящийся путь. Яркое свечение еще продолжается. В этом опыте оно длится необычайно долго.
Just why the Soviet Union would wish to detonate a megaton explosion, something about which we can all speculate.
At Oxford, integration at the University of Mississippi becomes a one-man crusade. When Air Force veteran James Meredith tries to register, the police lines are drawn, U.S. Marshals blocked. When university officials are cited for contempt of federal court, Governor Ross Barnett personally Negro applicant. Meredith goes away, and the federal government ponders its next move. The forces increase tenfold and more. It is not enough to avert a night of rioting, leaving 2 dead and the campus the shambles of a battlefield. "75 students and other rioters are arrested. Among those seized, former Major General Edwin Walker, who is charged with insurrection. And James Meredith becomes a duly registered student at the University of Mississippi.
Sir, there's been a great deal of turmoil and conflict. 2 people have been killed. Do you have any feelings of guilt? Have you given it any second thoughts?
I'm very sorry that anyone had to get hurt or killed. But of course, I think that's an unfair question to me. I don't believe any of you believe that I had anything to do with it.
President Kasavubu is near Leopoldville on his return from a conference of Congolese leaders in Madagascar. at which it was agreed to convert the Republic into a loose confederation. The streets are jammed for a parade in celebration of the decision. But Red opposition to the plan is heated, and the pro-Soviet Antoine Gizenga, Lumumba's political heir, still controls key areas and sizable armed forces. The Congo's problems are far from over.
Vienna was a neutral arena for a sparring match between two worlds. The men who hold the power to write tomorrow's history met, smiled, and resolved no problems. The dictator and the president, the East and the West.
St. James Church in the Hudson River hamlet of Hyde Park is the scene of last rites for the First Lady of the World, Eleanor Roosevelt. President Kennedy heads the list of distinguished world leaders who pay last tribute to the extraordinary and beloved woman who is remembered as a humanitarian and one who loved her fellow man.
No strife, no national conflict in outer space as yet. Its hazards are hostile to us all. Its conquest deserves the best of all mankind. And its opportunity, cooperation may be. But why, some say, the moon? Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why, 35 years ago, fly the Atlantic? Why does Rice play Texas? We choose to go to the moon.
It's a quick show.
We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things. Not because they are easy, but because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept.
Okay, so there's all 3 tapes, and that was a lot of numbers. That was a lot. So let me scale this down to size. Off stream, I will confirm. Well, I will put in some pictures. I will do a lot of that. I'll just be doing. So I'll put in new Warzone code, and I want to confirm that this that the blue was indeed these that were, or the thing was ever. Let me check. Sorry, it was going in and out of this a lot. I just want to make sure. I wasn't too sure. So, like I said, that was really a lot of information to actually take in. So tomorrow, hopefully, around 11:30 or whenever I can get to it. I really don't know the exact time I will be streaming. Maybe 11, maybe sometime other day or something, or sometime tomorrow. But I will get more videos out because this is really fun. I really like doing this. So for right now, we did watch all the videos, and I don't have Warzone, so I'm downloading it on my PS4 now. So tomorrow when I do stream, I'm going to have it up on my PS4 so I can go to Bunker and everything and see what's there just to confirm. But like I said, off stream I will be going to see if I can find anything but the Warzone stuff. So then I will also put in pictures and everything down here for the new Warzone codes. Anyways, other than that, that should end enough. I just wanted to go ahead and look through these again, even though they are the same videos and have different numbers in them. But anyways, that's gonna end this here. So yeah, I really wanted to do more, but unfortunately I do not have Warzone. I have tried downloading it on PC. Every time I did, it would just crash. So yeah, tomorrow I will have it up on my PS4 to go ahead and play, and I might be doing, and I think it's done today, but I didn't have it up. I didn't think about it. But anyways, so yeah, that's been another stream by me. If you enjoyed, like and subscribe, and yeah, peace.